DEBTS OWED, a Pale Ring short story, written by Brian McKee, based on Ringlight Fables. First day, 6th week, 3rd season, year 1080. The Halcis Estate, Asmara.
Dear Godfried, this is Tuki Fletcher, writing on behalf of the rest of my group. We've made contact with the kobolds you gave us the information on. They claim to be escapees of a mining operation out of Fort Red Iron, mostly consisting of children, elderly, and infirm. They're from all over Oris, taken from their homes and forced to work these mines under threat of death to eggs and loved ones. The main enforcers are the Jade Halberds. We intercepted a troop of them performing an assault on this group of kobolds. Minov's mother is among those that could not escape from the mines, and is still in Fort Red Iron. Is there a way you might be able to intervene? We are requesting any assistance you can give in getting the Jade Halberds distracted or removed, so that we can set a rescue mission into action, if you cannot act directly against the mine. Any help that could be provided would be very much appreciated. Sincerest regards, Tuki Fletcher.
Godfried Halcis let the sheet of parchment slip from his fingers to crumple quietly against the polished wood of his desk without a word. The aging human man settled his face into his palm with a long-suffering, full-bodied sigh. He rubbed at his eyes with the tips of his bare fingers, hoping that maybe he was reading the note incorrectly. But when his hands came away from his face, he was greeted by the same message, as well as the small stack of copied letters addressed to and written by agents of the Jade Halberds. Well, shit, Godfried grumbled. Tora, his personal aide and butler, stood near the door, hands folded politely over the head of his walking stick. The aging Kraven, practically ancient by the standards of his people, tilted his head, sending his fraying feathers wavering as if in an unseen wind. I gather our friends have not sent you good tidings, he asked, his old voice textured in a way that Godfried knew was designed to be pleasing to the ear, like a beloved grandfather telling stories at a bedside at night. Godfried leaned back in his cushioned seat, meeting his aide's gaze. It seems our newest helpers have gotten themselves bound up in a rather precarious web, he explained, tapping his fingers to the letter. Namely, they're asking for my help in somehow distracting a fortress operated by the Jade Halberds, so they can launch a rescue operation. Tora quirked a brow. A rescue operation? Stifling another sigh, Godfried spent the next few minutes recounting the tale to Tora, and wasn't sure how to feel about the fact that the Kraven's face did not change. He looked neither angered nor pleased. As ever, the butler's expression stayed carefully neutral. Either that, or Godfried wasn't as good at reading a Kraven's face as he thought he was. Well then, Master Halcis, what do you plan to do? Tora finally asked. I don't know. Godfried threw his hands up into the air. I want to help them, obviously, but I'm not exactly in a good position to do much, now am I? Why is that? It's not within my power, Godfried reminded Tora. And it was true, too. They weren't agents of the law in this family. Godfried had a bit of investment into a handful of businesses across Asmara and the broader territory, that much was true. And such was where a fair portion of his family wealth came from. But his primary role was not as a politician, minister, or any of the other powers that be in Valrive that could take action against a slave operation. I am, at most, a scholar who happens to know some people. I coordinate field agents for the Solemn Erudites. I don't get my fingers dirty in matters like this. I just don't have the means. Tora hummed thoughtfully, tapping his fingers against the head of his staff. If I may be so bold as to point out, sir, I sincerely doubt Tuki and the rest of them have the authority to take action against that fortress either. But I get the feeling that will not do much to stop them from doing what they deem is right. And Minerva's mother is among the enslaved. A warm note came to Tora's voice, his cheeks lifting in the Kraven equivalent of a smile. Knowing that little kobold, there is no force in Parnos or Tormos that could possibly stay her hand. At that, Godfried had to release a chuckle. On that front, at least, you and I are in agreement. But that puts me in an even bigger bind, he lamented, taking up the envelope in his hand again. This letter was sent days ago from Antarine and only just now reached me. I've no way of knowing how the situation may have developed since then. So, I ask again, Tora urged with a subtle click of his beak. What do you intend to do, sir? Godfried sighed, leaning forward. I fear there's not much I can do, Tora, he breathed, closing his eyes. My options in fields like this are limited. And if I'm not careful, if I overstep, I may bring consequences down upon this house. Is this household more important than rescuing slaves, sir? Tora questioned, and though the question carried an edge of accusation, his tone did not. As ever, Tora's voice was patient. Just patient. Somehow, that was even more frustrating. A question like that should sound accusatory, not level. Godfried's skin prickled with irritation, but he kept his vexation out of his voice. Tora was a good man and a faithful servant and friend. Please understand, Tora. If consequences fall on me, they will likely also fall on my son, and I only just got him back. By the 5, the boy's only just learned how to walk without help again. I can't... He sat back in his chair again, taking a breath to steady the quiver creeping into his voice. I want to help Minerva, I do. I promised her I would. They all brought my son back, but I can't trade my son's future for them. He's all I have left. And I'll not have the actions of others coerce me into upending his life, not when he's only just gotten it back. Tora considered the explanation, nodding slowly. I understand. I missed the young master as well. So do you intend to do nothing, then? I didn't say that, Godfried replied. But if I do anything, it must be subtle, it must be carefully considered. I have to weigh all of my options and all of the variables. I'll give it thought, but right now, I just don't see a way forward. Tora nodded again. Very well. If it pleases you then, sir, I shall leave you to your thoughts. Godfried wanted to say something, but he wasn't sure what he could. In the end, he settled for a nod and a polite wave of dismissal. Go on then, but do not push yourself too hard, old friend. You're not getting any younger. No, I am not. Tora agreed with a small nod, then turned to leave, the door closing behind him. Godfried slumped in his seat, rubbing at his forehead, as all at once, he felt as if he were being shamed. Rainfall was a consistent thing in Valrive. Even in the height of summer, heavy rainfall would blanket the land, often rolling into the enormous valley that contained the nation through a gap in the mountains to the far north and east. Oceanic storms would flow through the gap, funneled inland like water through a tap, then swell and blossom to envelop the land, caged in by the very mountains that focused them so tightly. As such, when sheets of rain fell down on Asmara after sunset, it came as no surprise to Godfried. He stood in one of the various lounges that adorned his family estate, staring out the window. The distant, flickering lights of street lamps were distorted by the sheets of rain that ran down the glass pane. Anything besides those spots of orange were utterly indecipherable through the dark, with the ring light being so concealed behind dense cloud cover. A cup was held in Godfried's hand, hot to the touch from steaming tea. He sipped at it, a heady mixture meant to induce drowsiness and sleep. He should have been in bed hours ago. The demands of his work for the erudites was near enough to never-ending, and he needed to be sharp to be effective. Even if all he did was tell what team to send to what archaeological site, one misstep could see him hurling a team of witless rookies into a nest of Cathari, or an adherent encampment. But sleep had eluded him that night, chased away by the lingering tension and stress of Tuki Fletcher's letter. He had considered many options, but all carried with them an unacceptable level of risk for him and his son. Soft footfalls in the hall outside the lounge heralded the arrival of a visitor. The door swung open with barely even a creak from the well-oiled hinges. "Father?" Donald called, closing the door behind him. Godfried turned to his son and forced on a warm smile. "Donald, what are you doing up? You still need your rest, son." Donald shrugged, walking forward to stand beside his father. "I couldn't sleep," he explained. "Got up to walk the house, clear my head. Saw the firelight under the door, drew me in like a moth. Why are you up?" Godfried lost his smile and turned to find a seat on one of the lounge chairs in the cozy space, his tired eyes getting lost in the blazing hearth. "Much the same, I fear. Sleep eludes me tonight." Donald found a seat across from his father, his young features scrunching in thought. "Let me guess. You are troubled by Tuki's letter?" he asked. Godfried had been lifting his mug to his face, but came up short. He curled a brow at Donald. "I did not tell you about that." "Tora told you, didn't he?" he deduced quickly. Donald nodded. "He gave me the rundown." Which was shorthand for the Kraven used his species' penchant for perfect memory and mimicry to recite the entire letter and the subsequent conversation in flawless detail. Godfried sighed and set his mug down on the end table beside his seat and laced his fingers together between his knees. "Well, then I see no reason to conceal it. Yes, I am troubled by the letter, or more specifically, by Tuki's request." Donald tilted his head. "What stays your hand?" "If Tora told you what's happening, then you know what," Godfried explained. "I have few options, and fewer still that would not bring trouble upon this family, and by extension, on you." Donald's lips quirked up into a small smile. "Well, rather suspicious, then, that you didn't ask me my opinion on the matter, don't you think?" Godfried glared at him, then sighed and slumped back in his seat. He took a large swallow from his mug and rubbed at his forehead. "You would have just urged me to help in any way I can," he murmured quietly, "even if it puts us at risk." "Of course I would," Donald replied softly. "Need I remind you that beyond being in your employ, they are also my friends?" "You don't need to remind me," Godfried pointed out curtly. "But you entirely miss that your friendship with them compels you to take action that puts this family at risk." "Well, they risked their lives to save me, Father," Donald reminded him with narrowing eyes. "Me, a stranger in a mad psychopath's murder dungeon. I was emaciated, dehydrated, delirious with despair. I couldn't even stand or walk on my own. That was a distraction at best and a liability at worst. They could have easily left me to die and been done with it, but instead they went out of their way to break my chains and bring me back here. To you." Godfried was quiet for a long moment. That much was true. Donal had been the prisoner of an insane governess for quite some time. Veronica Shayela of Canala's Rest. Before she had been brought down, she had delighted in kidnapping travelers and forcing them to run her gauntlet of death in old escape tunnels built under her family estate. An operation she had apparently run in secret for years. It wasn't until she made the mistake of abducting Tuki Fletcher, Boran Emberfall, Ludwig Anush, and a wizard named Tristan Viator that she had finally faced the consequences of her actions.
What then would you have me do, my son?
Godfried finally asked, putting his mug aside. Donal smiled.
Send me.
Godfried's eyes widened.
I beg your pardon? Send me to Antarine. I'll bring word of this mine's misdeeds to the attention of the powers that be.
Absolutely not. Godfried shut down the idea at once, leaning forward in his seat.
Son, do you even understand what it is you are proposing?
You're still recovering from your ordeal under Canala's Rest. And what would you even tell the Kadam, Donal's smile grew.
That I have reliable sources telling me that a mine operating within his jurisdiction is likely lying to him about how it gets its work done.
Godfried stared at him for several long seconds.
So, you mean to tell me that you want to see a man who enslaved kobolds get caught for fraudulent record-keeping?
Donal shrugged.
Oh, well, it's that or we can let our friends do to the mine what they did to Veronica and weather the potential fallout. Whatever they do, this way at least, we might be able to take some pressure off of them. That is, assuming Kadam Waltham even believes you.
Or that anyone believes you enough to investigate, Godfried exclaimed.
I wager he'll have no choice,
Donal rebuked.
By all accounts, Waltham's a prick, but he's not stupid. And besides all that, I've been to Antarine not long ago when they were bringing me back to you. They spoke with Commander Lucasen to report Veronica's misdeeds and the incident at Lambsong with the Bleakfeather gang.
Godfried nodded, recalling that whole sordid affair. A band of downtrodden folk had gathered around a Crovan named Jaka Bleakfeather and deceived the people of Lambsong into thinking they were being preyed upon by a monster from the world below called a Lugarith. The gang then compelled the villagers into paying outrageous fees for protection against the beast. To sell the lie, they murdered several people, leaving a young boy, Percy, as an orphan. It had been thanks to the group that escaped Veronica that those criminals had been brought to justice.
So, you have the credibility of association.
Godfried nodded slowly.
Knowledge of recent events that are otherwise not widely known to the public, and the accusation you bring is serious enough that you're expecting someone to look into it just as a matter of precaution.
Donal nodded.
That is more or less the gist of it. Aye.
Godfried slumped.
It is still risky. Red Iron Mine is no small thing, as I understand it.
A venture like that, funded in private with a company as elite as the Jade Halberds presiding over it, that is some serious gold being thrown around.
Someone with that kind of coin could ruin you.
Donal shrugged once again.
They could. I don't care.
But I do, Godfried's voice raised. Just slightly.
I've only just gotten you back.
Donal matched him.
It's not your choice to make, Father. I'm your son, not your servant. And in case you forgot, you're not the only one with a debt to repay here.
That finally stilled Godfried's tongue in his mouth, and a tidal wave of shame snuffed the candle of his anger. A beat passed before Donal relaxed.
Please, Father, let me do this. Let me do right by them. Maybe we can't help with the fort itself, but maybe we can bring some justice onto the head of the one who runs it. And setting all of that aside,
If the Jade Halberds are running a slave operation and killing hatchlings to compel the obedience of their workers, well, then it's only right to put an end to it. I know a thing or two of cages at this point. No one deserves it. Godfried was quiet for what felt like a long time as he processed his son's words. He took a deep breath and finished drinking from his mug. The tension within him was finally starting to unravel, and a small smile crossed his lips. Oh, son. You do know how proud I am of you, right? He asked in a hushed whisper. Donald put on a cocky smirk. Pride? Already? I've done hardly anything but get caught and tortured after I left home. Well, maybe. Godfried acknowledged with a quiet chuckle. But I've no shame in telling you that despite that, you are a far braver man than I. And that aside, you are right. You are a man grown. I may be your father, but I am not your master. If your heart is set on this, then far be it from me to stop you. Help our friends. My only demand is that you do not go alone. Donald smiled wide, then rose from his seat. He crossed the gap between them and wrapped his father in a warm, grateful embrace. I'll take some of our estate guards with me, he promised. Thank you, Father. No. Thank you, Godfried whispered back. And I'll have to remember to thank Tora as well. What did Tora do? You sent you to me? Godfried chuckled, pulling back. So your reckless sense of justice could kick my cowardly ass into motion. You're not a coward, Father, Donald chastised him. You're just cautious. Next-door neighbors that share a garden, Godfried dismissed. But, we risk losing ourselves in a meaningless metaphor. Go and get some sleep, son. Come tomorrow, we will make preparations. Donald nodded. Of course, Father. You go and get some sleep, too. Unless your insomnia troubles you still? Godfried looked down at his empty tea mug, feeling decidedly more relaxed and drowsy than when this conversation began. I do not think that will be a problem. Hey there! Thanks for listening to this one-shot. If you liked what you heard here and you want to hear more, please consider popping into my Patreon page. As always, a massive shout-out of thanks goes out to those of you who are already pledged. Further, if you enjoyed the story and want to see others in the same world, I have a playlist full of Pale Ring stories on my channel, or if you want to go a step further in exploring this world, consider giving my book Addernotch a look. Links to all of these will be in the description below. Thanks again for swinging by, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves, keep listening, and don't be a dick. Bye!